above and below us. And this picture here shows us that there's mass down there that we can tap into that we haven't been, and this is the basis of geothermal processing. Free and renewable energy. Basically, we're grabbing BTUs from the Earth's surface. That radiant sun energy that hits the surface is absorbed, and we're typically anywhere from 50 to 55 degrees below the frost line. The deeper you go, the little more efficient the system is because of the more stable temperatures. From 21 feet and above, there is some seasonal flux. Below 21 feet, we get more stable temperatures. So depending on whether you're doing horizontal or vertical systems, will add to that efficiency. Quiet operation, the machines are very quiet. Safe, all electrical. There's no combustion with a geothermal system. It's all electric based. One reason we push these also is if your strategy is to head to net zero energy, which is what I think everybody should be looking to do. You're not going to do that with a fossil fuel service instead of heating and cooling system. We can produce electric on our sites, in our homes. We can't produce, most of us aren't going to go out and drill. Actually, I just heard recently that somebody has their own natural gas on their property in New York, but most of us aren't going to do that. Increased comfort. With geothermal processing, it's a low heat heating system. Unlike a typical boiler or furnace that heats temperatures to typically 180 degrees and hits a call from the thermostat very fast, you have these on and offs all the time with the systems. And a lot of people don't find that comfortable. With a geothermal system, it's a lower heat, but it's meant to run longer. The cycles are longer. It's going to flood the room with conditioning. It's basically, a more comfortable heating system. Reliable and longer life expectancy. These units are all indoors. Unlike an AC compressor, an important fact is geothermal does both your heating and cooling. It's one system that's doing both. Where you typically have an AC compressor outdoors, subject to the elements and vandalism, and plus it takes up space in the yard. The geothermal system is all contained inside or up on a roof. And it adds to the life expectancy. The fact that there is no combustion also adds to that. You don't have that same maintenance issue every year with having to clean the furnace and clean your... You don't need a chimney for this. Again, no combustion. Safety-wise, less risk of fire, again, for that reason. Less impact on the environment. The EPA recognizes geothermal processing as the most environmentally friendly and cost-effective way of heating and cooling our homes these days. And then substantial energy savings. We'll be talking about that further in a second. Okay, here's a typical house. Lighting, these are national averages. Lighting, about 6% of our costs in the home. Appliances, about 11%. Domestic hot water, 21%. A lot of people don't realize how much it costs to heat hot water constantly. And then heating and cooling, 62% of our energy is spent for heating and cooling our homes. With geothermal processing, we're going to get 53% of our energy for free. This is where the efficiencies come in. When you're looking at a 92%, everybody's talking about 92, 93% efficient gas burners these days. Because of the free energy we're getting out of the earth, we're looking at more between the average of 300 to 400% efficiencies out of these geothermal systems. Heating and cooling down to 18%. You'll notice that domestic hot water has dropped. You wonder why you're heating and cooling, what's that got to do with the hot water? One of the perks of geothermal processing is in the summertime, we're looking to take the heat out of a building and dump it back into the ground. And what we have, and most of the equipment is standard these days, what they call the superheater, which transfers that heat. Rather than waste it back to the ground, we divert it to the hot water tank. It virtually gives you free hot water in the summer, and you do get some residual in the wintertime. So it's just a side perk of putting in a geothermal system. All right, basically in the heating season, we're grabbing BTUs out of the ground and bringing it to the house. Now we're bringing that water temperature to that 50, 55 degrees, and the heat pump does the difference to bring it up to what we need to heat the house. And I'll show you an example of a heat pump in a minute. And in the summertime, it's doing just the opposite. Pulling the heat out of the house, and again, dumping it into the ground. The second law of thermodynamics, hot goes to cold, basically. And what we're doing is with this fluid, in the summertime, we're grabbing that heat in the fluid. This is a sample of a pipe that would go in the ground. The fluid would run through the pipe, and the ground would absorb that heat away from it and bring back the cooler fluid for us to cool with. And then here's a standard refrigeration cycle. Basically, all geothermal processing is a refrigeration cycle. We're bringing it back with the tube and tube, and depending on whether we're heating and cooling, it's got a reversing valve. They'll grab on the condenser side or the evaporator side to boost or lower the temperatures to what we need to actually heat or cool our house. So we start with the 40, 50 to 55, and then we get our temperature to what we need via the refrigeration cycle. And this is why we can do it without fossil fuels, all electric. And that's a standard heat pump setup, no different than most furnaces that people are familiar with. And then you have water-to-water units if you're doing some kind of hot water radiant floor systems. All right, when you're talking levels of cost to install a geothermal, your pond or lake loops are your least expensive. If you're lucky enough to live on the water, it's as simple as coiling that same type of pipe and sinking it in the water. You've got to have at least 6, 7 feet of water above you. You channel under the frost line to the home or the building, and you can exchange energy from that water source. This is an example of some plates that anybody familiar with Bear Mountain Inn in Bear Mountain, New York? That inn went all geothermal using these stainless steel plates. This is less expensive. This is a little more efficient with the stainless steel as far as the transfer. They decided to go that way. And it's a little safer with the fish hooks and stuff. So if you don't happen to have a water source next to you, the next middle of the road cost is the horizontal system. As you see, these are examples of large trenches in people's yards. Typically, we're putting 3,000 to 5,000 linear feet of pipe in the ground this way. It takes up a lot of space. Typically, you want at least an acre or more to do this. You've got to have a 10-foot separation from these trenches. Middle of the road cost. If you live in a smaller lot, vertical is unfortunately the most expensive option. But again, it's still available. Or areas with a lot of rock. We do a lot of drilling through granite and things like this. It's a very messy job, but you can get the pipe in the ground and get the BTUs out this way also. So we do a lot of this for commercial buildings. So most commercial buildings don't have that big a lot. And then this is just samples of it's been featured on Dirtiest Jobs, the kind of mess you get when you're drilling. We were protecting the lake here and a lot of granite from the drilling process. All right. There's not a whole lot of incentives for geothermal. The reason being the way the state looks at it and the federal government, people are going to naturally start migrating to this anyway. They feel they don't really need to incent it that much. They'd rather incent things like solar power, wind power, biomass, things like this that people wouldn't naturally migrate to. Because of costs and the fluctuation of fossil fuels, like I said, they think that the demand is going to be there, so they don't really need to put a lot of money to it. But with this last bailout, this $700 billion bailout package, they negotiated $2,000, 10% up to $2,000 for residential installs. So it takes the edge off. It's a little something. That's a tax credit. And for commercial buildings, 10% no cap, which is substantial. If it's a big system going in, that can save you a lot of money. So the government is stepping in and doing a little bit to help out there. Now that deals with tax credits. You also have the home performance program that also applies some of that $2,000 to $4,000 towards this installation. I'm going to touch real briefly on solar energy. The basics of solar, where we are in North America, the sun's to the south, rises from the east to the west. You can see here, in the summertime, the sun is higher in the sky. Wintertime, it's lower in the sky. That's why when you typically see a solar panel installed, it's at an angle. You're looking to get the most out of a full year's coverage. If you were to have it flatter, it'd be more of a summer system, and vice versa with the more direct or upright system. So we want to put in this area, about a 35 to 37 degree angle on a solar panel to maximize the sun energy we can get from it. We see a lot of commercial buildings have flat roofs, and they're putting them on them just knowing that they're just going to get a lot of energy in the summer, not as much in the wintertime. You'll see here the trees shading. You notice in the picture here, there's no trees out here. Shading is very important when it comes to solar electric. It's also important with solar thermal, but not as important, and I'll tell you why here in a second.